The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was filled with representatives from 48 different species. Some had scales, some had feathers, and some had skin that changed color with their mood. They all sat in their assigned seats, watching the center of the room where a single human woman stood alone. Ambassador Sora wore a simple black uniform. She was not tall, she was not big. She looked small compared to the massive aliens around her, but her eyes were steady and her voice was calm. 3 years, she said. For 3 years the Dominion has attacked our cargo ships near the border. 17 ships destroyed, 412 of our people killed. We asked for peace. We asked for talks. We asked them to stop. She paused and looked directly at the delegation on the far side of the hall. Their leader, High Overlord, sat on a throne made of black metal. He was twice the size of a human, with gray skin and 4 arms. His eyes were red and filled with amusement. We received no answer, Sora continued. Only more attacks, only more death. The council chamber was quiet. Everyone knew they were powerful. They ruled over 200 worlds. Their military had thousands of warships. They had conquered dozens of species before. No one ever challenged them. And humanity was young. They had only spread to 37 star systems. Their visible fleet was barely 300 ships. In the eyes of the galaxy, they were small and weak. High Overlord stood up from his throne. His voice boomed across the chamber like thunder. The humans come here to complain like children, he said. Your ships entered space we claimed. Your people died because they were too stupid to stay away. This is not our problem. This is your failure. Some of the other alien delegates nodded. Others looked away, too afraid to show any opinion. Sora did not react to the insult. She simply waited until finished speaking. Then she took a deep breath. I did not come here to complain, she said. I came here to deliver a message, a final message. She pressed a button on her wrist device. A hologram appeared above her head showing the Earth, blue oceans, green lands, white clouds, the home of humanity. This is Earth's final warning, Sora said. Her voice was not loud, but somehow it filled every corner of the Great Hall. Any further aggression against human ships, human colonies, or human citizens will be considered an act of war. If you step beyond this line, you will face complete destruction. Not negotiation, not occupation, destruction. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the delegation began to laugh. High Overlord laughed the loudest. His 4 arms slapped against his chest in amusement. Other officers joined him, their harsh voices echoing through the chamber. Destruction, said between laughs. You, destroy us. Little human, we have conquered civilizations 10 times your age. We have burned worlds that had technology when your ancestors were living in caves. Your 300 little ships mean nothing against our might. He walked down from his platform and approached Sora. He towered over her, his shadow covering her completely. Go home, little ambassador, he said. Go home and pray that we decide not to visit your precious Earth, because if we do, your warning will be the last words your species ever speaks. Sora looked up at him. She did not step back, she did not show fear. You have been warned, she said simply. Remember this day. Then she turned and walked out of the chamber. The laughed at her back. Other delegates whispered among themselves. Most thought the humans were foolish. Some thought they were brave but stupid. None of them understood. Far away, on Earth, Admiral Minu watched the entire scene through a live broadcast. He sat in the command center of Earth's military headquarters, surrounded by screens showing data from across human space. He was 63 years old, with gray hair and a face full of wrinkles from years of service. His uniform was simple, with no decorations except a single silver star on his collar. He had commanded ships. He had fought in small conflicts, but he had spent most of his career preparing for a day like this. Dr. Lee stood beside him. She was younger, maybe 40, with tired eyes and fingers that never stopped moving. She was the chief scientist of Earth's Defense Research Division. She knew secrets that most humans would never learn. The military has approximately 8,000 warships spread across their territory, said, reading from her tablet. Their technology is advanced but old. They have not innovated in centuries because they never needed to. No one has challenged them. Minyu nodded slowly, until now. On the screen, Ambassador Sora had left the council chamber. They were still laughing. The other delegates were already forgetting about the human warning. They think we are bluffing, said. Everyone always thinks we are bluffing, Minyu replied. That is the point. He stood up from his chair and walked to a window. Outside, the night sky was filled with stars. Somewhere out there among those stars, human colonies were growing. Human children were being born. Human dreams were being built. And somewhere out there, they were planning their next attack. Begin awakening the Black Fleet, Minyu said quietly. His eyes widened slightly. All of it. All of it. She nodded and began typing commands into her tablet. Across human space, in hidden bases that no one knew about, machines began to wake up. Ships that had been sleeping for decades received power. Weapons that had never been fired prepared for war. The galaxy thought they knew humanity. They saw a young species with a small fleet and peaceful intentions. They saw farmers and traders and scientists. They saw weakness. They did not see what was hidden. For 200 years, humanity had built in secret. Every asteroid field hid a shipyard. Every hollow moon contained weapons. Every peaceful colony sat above bunkers filled with soldiers. Earth had learned the lessons of its own violent history. Peace was precious, but peace required strength. The 300 visible ships were not the human fleet. They were just the mask. Admiral Minyu returned to his chair and looked at the screen one last time. The Galactic Council meeting was ending. They were returning to their ships, still amused by the human threat. They will attack again, Minyu said, soon. Yes, agreed. They cannot allow a small species to threaten them publicly. Their pride will demand action. Minyu closed his eyes. He thought about the 412 humans who had already died. He thought about the families who would never see them again. He thought about the children who grew up without parents. When they come, he said, we will be ready. Somewhere in the darkness of space, the Black Fleet was waking up. 4,700 warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything the galaxy had ever seen. They had been built for one purpose only, not for defense, not for patrol, not for protection. They had been built to end civilizations. Earth had given its final warning. The Had laughed. Soon they would learn that humanity never made empty threats. 3 weeks had passed since the warning. 3 weeks of quiet, 3 weeks of waiting. On the human colony world of Nu, life continued as normal. The planet was beautiful, with blue oceans and green forests that reminded settlers of the old Earth they had left behind. Over 2 million people called it home. Families lived in small cities along the coastlines. Children went to school. Farmers grew crops in the rich soil. Workers built ships in the orbital factories above. It was morning when the alarms began. Captain Park was drinking coffee on the bridge of her ship, the Silent Hammer, when her tactical officer shouted a warning. The Silent Hammer was a stealth destroyer, small and fast, designed to watch and report rather than fight. It had been patrolling the edge of Nu star system for 3 months. 60 contacts emerging from hyperspace, the officer said. Military signatures. They are heading directly for the planet. Set down her coffee and walked to the main screen. Her heart was beating fast, but her face showed nothing. She was 34 years old and had commanded ships for 10 years. She knew what 60 warships meant. Time to reach the planet, she asked. 4 hours at their current speed. 4 hours. Not enough time to evacuate everyone. Not enough time for reinforcements to arrive. Not enough time for anything except dying. Press the emergency communication button. This is Captain Park of the Silent Hammer to Earth Command. Attack force approaching new. 60 warships confirmed. Requesting immediate support. Beginning civilian evacuation. Then she turned to her crew. They were young, most of them. Some had never seen combat. Now they were about to face an enemy fleet that outnumbered them 60 to 1. "You all know what this means," said. "We cannot win this fight, but we can buy time. Every minute we delay them is another minute for civilians to escape. Every ship we damage is one less ship bombing our people." Her crew nodded. No one ran, no one cried. They were afraid, but they were also human, and humans did not abandon their own. On the planet below, Sargent received the evacuation order while he was training new soldiers at the main military base. He was 41 years old, with scars on his hands from old battles, and a voice that could make young soldiers stand straight with a single word. "Evacuation protocol is active," the announcement said. "All civilians report to designated transport zones. This is not a drill." Grabbed his weapon and began shouting orders. His squad of 50 soldiers spread out across the nearest city, going door to door, helping people to the transport ships. Emergency sirens filled the air. People ran through the streets carrying children and bags and whatever they could hold. An old woman refused to leave her home. She had lived there for 30 years, she said. Her husband was buried in the garden. She would not go. Knelt beside her. "Grandmother," he said gently, "your husband would want you to live. Please, let us help you." She cried, but she let him carry her to the transport. In the sky above, civilian ships launched in waves, hundreds of them packed with families rising toward the safety of deep space. The colony had emergency plans for this. Everyone knew where to go. Everyone knew what to do. But there were too many people and not enough time. Captain watched the fleet approach on her screen. At the front was a massive flagship, bigger than anything in the human visible fleet. War Commander was aboard that ship. He was famous among the for burning worlds and enjoying it. "They will be in weapons range of the planet in 30 minutes, her tactical officer reported. Made her decision. "All hands prepare for combat. We will engage the enemy fleet." Her crew looked at her. One ship against 60. It was suicide. "We are not trying to win," said. "We are trying to make them angry. We are trying to make them chase us instead of bombing civilians. Every second counts." The Silent Hammer moved forward, its stealth systems hiding it from enemy sensors. Waited until they were close, very close, almost touching the enemy formation. Then she fired everything. 3 ships exploded before they even knew what was happening. The Silent Hammer twisted and turned, using its small size and speed to avoid return fire. Flew like a demon, pushing her ship beyond its limits. "Enemy flagship is turning toward us," the tactical officer shouted. "Good thought, chase me. Forget the planet, chase me." But War Commander was not stupid. He sent only 10 ships after the Silent Hammer. The rest continued toward New. The bombardment began. From space it looked almost beautiful, bright lights falling from the sky like rain. But on the ground those lights were death. Buildings exploded. Streets melted. People who could not reach the transports in time simply disappeared. Was loading the last transport in his sector when the first bombs fell nearby. The ground shook so hard he fell to his knees. Dust and fire filled the air. He could hear screaming somewhere behind him. "Go," he shouted at the transport pilot. "Get them out of here now." The transport rose into the sky, filled with 300 civilians. Watched it go, then turned back toward the city. There were still people out there. He could not save everyone, but he could try. Above the planet, Captain was losing. Her ship had taken heavy damage. One engine was dead. Weapons were failing. Half her crew was wounded. The 10 ships had surrounded her, cutting off any escape. She ordered her crew to the escape pods. They argued, but she did not listen. She physically pushed her tactical officer into a pod and sealed the door. "Tell my family I love them," she said through the intercom. "Now go." The pods launched, turned back to her controls. Her ship was dying, but it could still move. It could still do one more thing. She aimed the silent hammer directly at the flagship and pushed the engines to maximum. The impact was massive. The silent hammer crashed into the flagship's side, tearing through armor and systems. The flagship did not explode, but it was crippled. War Commander survived, but barely. His bridge was destroyed. His communications were down. It was not enough to stop the attack, but it was something. On the ground, the bombardment continued for 2 hours. When it finally stopped, much of New was burning. Cities that had taken decades to build were gone in minutes. 2 million civilians escaped on transports. 300,000 did not. When the last transport jumped to safety, was still on the surface, helping wounded survivors in a basement shelter. He did not know if he would be rescued. He did not care. He was doing what soldiers did. Far away on Earth, Admiral Menu received the report. He read every word. He looked at every number. 300,000 dead. Men, women, children, families erased, dreams destroyed. He sat in silence for exactly 3 seconds. His staff watched him, waiting. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but harder than steel. "The warning was ignored," he said. "There will be no second warning. Activate all Black Fleet assets, every ship, every weapon. Target the Dominion in its entirety." Dr. Lee began typing commands. Across human space, hidden ships received their orders. Sleeping weapons came alive. "Sir," one officer asked carefully, "what are our rules of engagement?" Menu looked at him. "Their military is to be completely destroyed, every warship, every weapons factory, every soldier who raises a weapon against us. But civilians are not to be harmed unless necessary. We are not them. We do not murder children." He stood up and walked toward the door. "They wanted to see what happens when humanity goes to war," he said. "Now they will see." The Black Fleet was fully awake now. 4,700 warships began moving toward space. They carried weapons that could crack planets and soldiers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Earth had been patient for 3 years. Earth had warned them for 3 years. Earth had hoped for peace for 3 years. That time was over. Now came the war. The galaxy had always wondered about humanity. Such a young species, spreading so quickly, yet showing so little military power. Only 300 ships in their fleet. Only basic weapons on their stations. Some thought humans were peaceful. Some thought they were weak. Some thought they were simply too new to understand how dangerous the universe could be. They were all wrong. In the asteroid field of the Tau system, rocks that had floated silently for decades suddenly began to split apart. Inside them were not minerals or ice. Inside them were warships. Massive vessels, each 1/2 a kilometer long, covered in weapons that no alien had ever seen before. On the moon of a gas giant in the Wolf system, the ground cracked open. From beneath the frozen surface rose shipyard after shipyard, and from those shipyards came fighters and destroyers and cruisers, all painted black, all carrying the symbol of Earth. In the system, in the Barnard system, in every system where humans had colonies, the same thing was happening. Hidden bases were revealing themselves. Secret armies were marching to their ships. 2 centuries of preparation was finally being put to use. The Black Fleet had awakened. 4,700 warships. Some were destroyers, fast and deadly. Some were cruisers, balanced and strong. And some were battleships, giants of metal and fire that made the flagship look like a toy. Admiral Menu stood on the bridge of his command ship, the Final Answer. It was the largest vessel humanity had ever built. 2 kilometers from front to back, with weapons that could burn through any known shield and armor that could survive almost any attack. Lieutenant stood beside him, handling the tactical systems. was young, only 28, but he had the best tactical mind in the fleet. He could see patterns in battle that others missed. He could predict enemy movements before they happened. "All fleet elements reporting ready," said. 4,642 warships operational. Remaining ships will join within 48 hours. Minyu nodded. "Organize them into 40 strike groups. Each group will have specific targets in space. We hit everywhere at once. They will not know where to defend." Across the fleet, ship commanders received their orders. Engineers checked systems one last time. Soldiers loaded their weapons. Pilots reviewed their attack plans. Everyone knew what was coming. Everyone understood the mission. Meanwhile, at the Galactic Council, panic was spreading. Representatives who had laughed at humanity's warning 3 weeks ago were now watching their screens with horror. Reports were coming in from every corner of human space. Ships appearing from nowhere. Fleets larger than anyone had imagined. Counselor, a tall alien with blue skin and 3 eyes, had been one of the few who warned the privately not to attack humans. He had studied Earth's history. He had seen what humans did to each other in their past. He knew that a species capable of such violence against itself would be terrifying when united against an outside enemy. Now he was sending emergency messages to every non-aligned world near space. The same message every time: evacuate, leave. What is coming cannot be stopped. Ambassador Sora stood before the council one final time. The great hall that had been filled with laughter at her warning was now filled with fear. No one was laughing now. "We warned them," Sora said. Her voice was calm as always. "We warned everyone. We did not want this war. We asked for peace. We begged for understanding. They responded with murder. 300,000 of our people died on Nu." She paused and looked at the delegation. They were not laughing anymore. Their faces showed something that looked almost like fear. "Now the universe will see why humanity never needed to boast," Sora continued. "We never threatened, we only promised, and we always keep our promises." She turned and walked out. This time no one made a sound. In space, High Overlord was receiving reports that made no sense to him. Human ships everywhere, not hundreds, thousands. Where had they come from? How had they been hidden? His spies had watched human space for decades. They had seen only the small fleet, the peaceful colonies, the scientists and farmers. They had seen exactly what humanity wanted them to see. "This is impossible," said. "Our intelligence reported only 300 ships, only 300. His advisors had no answers. They could only show him the data. Human fleets were approaching space from multiple directions. They would arrive within days. Made his decision. He sent orders to every military base, every shipyard, every colony with defensive weapons. All forces were to gather and prepare for battle. He had 8,000 warships across 200 systems. He believed that even if the human numbers were real, quantity would defeat quality. He was wrong about that too. Dr. Lee was aboard the final answer, briefing Admiral Minyu and his command staff on the weapons they would be using. Most of these weapons had never been fired in actual combat. They had been tested in secret, improved over generations, waiting for this moment. "Gravity bombs," explained, showing holographic images. "They create a focused gravity field that crushes anything within range. Ships, stations, even small asteroids. Nothing survives." She moved to the next image. Phase missiles. They travel through hyperspace and exit inside enemy vessels, bypassing shields completely. The enemy cannot block what they cannot see coming. The next image showed a beam weapon. Stellar lances. Energy weapons that ignore conventional armor. One shot can cut a battleship in half. The officers listened in silence. These were not defensive weapons. These were not weapons for protecting borders or scaring enemies. These were weapons designed to destroy civilizations. Earth had built them hoping they would never be needed. but Earth had also built them knowing that someday they might be. We have approximately 37 million soldiers ready for ground operations, continued. Every one of them volunteers. Every one of them knows the mission. We will destroy military capability completely, but we will spare civilians wherever possible. Minyu nodded. This was important. Humanity was going to war, but it would not become the monsters it was fighting. Soldiers who attacked would die. Children hiding in shelters would live. That was the line that separated justice from revenge. What about the planet killer? Minyu asked. Our intelligence suggests they have a hidden weapon capable of destroying Earth itself. Smiled slightly. We identified it 6 months ago. A stealth team has already been sent. By the time this briefing ends, it will be destroyed. Across the galaxy, a small team of human special forces was doing exactly that. 3 soldiers, the best of the best, had infiltrated a hidden base on a frozen moon. They moved through corridors like ghosts, avoiding guards, disabling systems. In the center of the base was a massive weapon, capable of firing a beam that could shatter planets. They planted their explosives carefully. Then they disappeared into the darkness. Behind them, the base erupted in flames. The planet killer was gone before even knew it was threatened. Back on the final answer, Admiral Minyu gave his fleet the order to move. 4,700 warships entered hyperspace, heading toward territory. The largest military force in galactic history was on its way to war. Minyu stood at the window of his bridge, watching the stars blur as his ship accelerated. He thought about the dead of Nu. He thought about Captain, who had sacrificed her ship to save civilians. He thought about all the humans who had died because the thought humanity was weak. Those deaths would be answered, every single one. In the Galactic Council, alien representatives watched human fleets move across their star maps. Some felt fear. Some felt relief that they had never provoked humanity. And some, like Counselor, felt something like awe. He had been right. Humanity was terrifying, but they were also something else. They were fair. They warned before they attacked. They gave enemies a chance to surrender. They protected civilians even when destroying militaries. Perhaps, thought, the galaxy needed a species like this. A species that could enforce peace through the certainty of consequences. A species that would not conquer but would not allow conquest either. The war was about to begin. They had 200 systems and 8,000 ships. They believed they could survive. They did not understand what was coming. Humanity had been patient for so long. Humanity had built in secret for so long. Now that patience was ending. Now those secrets were revealed. And the galaxy would never forget what happened next. The war began in silence. Across 200 star systems, communication networks suddenly went dark. Relay stations that had worked for centuries stopped working. Military bases could not contact each other. Fleets could not receive orders from their commanders. The entire Dominion was blind and deaf. This was the work of human infiltration teams. Thousands of soldiers, trained for exactly this kind of mission, had slipped into space weeks before the attack. They moved through shadows, avoided detection, and planted devices that disrupted every communication system they had. Sergeant Major led one of these teams. He had been promoted after the attack on Nu, after spending 3 days in that basement shelter protecting civilian survivors until rescue ships arrived. Now he was behind enemy lines, doing what he did best. His team of 20 soldiers had disabled 4 relay stations in 3 days. They moved quickly, never staying in one place too long. They were searching for them, but finding invisible enemies was hard when you could not even talk to the search teams. Network is down across this sector, reported through his secure communicator. Enemy forces are confused. They do not know what is happening. From the final answer, Admiral Minyu received this report with satisfaction. The first phase was complete. They could not coordinate their defense. Now came the second phase. All strike groups, Minu ordered, begin operations. 40 human strike groups hit 40 different targets at the same moment. Shipyards exploded. Military bases burned. Weapons factories crumbled. In a single hour, the Dominion lost 15% of its military production capability. The real battle came at Vex Prime, the largest industrial hub in space. War Commander, who had survived Captain's attack on his flagship, was there with 400 warships, defending the factories that built half the Dominion's weapons. Lieutenant had designed the attack plan for Vex Prime. He had studied every bit of intelligence about tactics. He knew how they fought. He knew what they expected, and he planned to give them something completely different. 200 human ships dropped out of hyperspace near Vex Prime, saw them on his sensors and felt confident. 400 against 200. Easy odds. Destroy them, he ordered. Show these humans what real warriors can do. His fleet moved forward in their standard formation, a wedge designed to concentrate firepower. It was a formation that had won them hundreds of battles against dozens of species. But was ready. Phase 1, said calmly from the final answer, watching the battle through real-time feeds. Execute. The human ships did not meet the charge directly. Instead, they split into small groups, moving in patterns that seemed random but were carefully calculated. The wedge tried to follow, but each time they turned to chase one group, another group hit them from behind. Phase 2, execute. From the asteroid field nearby, 50 more human ships appeared. They had been hiding there for days, waiting for this moment. They came at them from above, firing gravity bombs that crushed enemy vessels like paper. Tried to reorganize his forces, but without proper communications, orders took too long to reach his captains. His fleet was falling apart, each ship fighting alone while human ships worked together like a single organism. Phase 3, execute. The human battleships opened fire with stellar lances. Beams of pure energy cut through cruisers like sunlight through fog. Explosions filled the space around Vex Prime. Watched his fleet die around him. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it ended, 400 warships were destroyed. The human fleet lost 12 vessels. Survived only because Admiral Minu had ordered his ship to be disabled rather than destroyed. The war commander was captured and brought aboard the final answer. Minu met him personally in the detention area. Was wounded, his gray skin covered in burns from electrical fires on his crippled bridge, but his red eyes still held anger. "You think you have won," said. "The Overlord will destroy you. He has thousands more ships. He will burn every human world." Minu looked at him calmly. "I am sending you back to your Overlord. You will carry a message for me." He stepped closer to the defeated commander. "The message is this: surrender unconditionally or there will be nothing left to surrender. You have 1 week to respond. Every day you delay, we will destroy 10 more of your systems. Not damage, destroy." Was put on a small transport and sent back to space. He arrived at the 3 days later, broken and humiliated. When he delivered the message to High Overlord, the Overlord's response was immediate. "Never," said, "we will never surrender to animals." He ordered all remaining forces to gather at the 3,000 warships. Everything the Dominion had left would make a final stand. They would show the galaxy that they could not be defeated by a young species with clever tricks. Meanwhile, the human advance continued. System after system fell. Military targets were destroyed with terrifying precision. Orbital defenses were crushed. Ground bases were demolished. But something strange was happening, something that confused the watching galaxy. Human soldiers were not killing civilians. On colony worlds, human ground forces secured cities without massacre. Sergeant Major led operations on 3 different planets. Each time his orders were the same: protect the innocent. He remembered one moment clearly. His squad had cornered a group of soldiers hiding in a school building. The soldiers had taken children as shields, believing humans would not attack. Walked toward the building alone, his weapon lowered. "You can come out," he called. "We will not harm the children. Surrender your weapons and you will be treated fairly. Resist and we will find another way, but those children will not be hurt." The soldiers did not believe him. Why would they? Their military killed civilians all the time. Why would humans be different? But waited. He waited for 6 hours, standing in the open, an easy target. His squad watched nervously. They watched from windows, confused by this human who did not attack. Finally, one young soldier walked out with his hands raised. Then another. Then more. In the end, all 23 soldiers surrendered. The children were released unharmed. Gave the children food and water and waited until local authorities could take them to safety. This story spread across space. Human soldiers who protected children. Human officers who accepted surrenders. Human medics who treated wounded enemies. The military was being annihilated, but civilians were being spared. Dr. Lee explained this to a confused Galactic Council representative, who asked why humans were showing mercy. "We destroy those who wage war," said. "We do not murder those who cannot fight. Children did not bomb new. Workers in factories did not choose to attack us. Soldiers who surrender are no longer our enemies. This is what separates us from those we fight. We are not conquerors. We are not monsters. We are humans." Some in the galaxy thought this was weakness. Counselor thought it was the most terrifying thing about humanity. A species that could destroy civilizations but chose to protect the innocent. A species with the power of gods and the conscience to use it carefully. What could possibly stand against something like that? As the human fleet approached, the High Overlord prepared his final defense. 3,000 warships formed a sphere around his planet. 12 billion civilians waited below, certain they would be exterminated. Had one last hope, a secret weapon hidden in a distant system, a planet killer aimed at Earth itself. If he could not win, he would make humanity pay. He would destroy there even as his own people died. He sent the activation signal. Nothing happened. He sent it again, still nothing. His advisors finally told him the truth. The weapon had been destroyed weeks ago. Human special forces had found it before the war even began. There was no secret weapon. There was no final revenge. There was only defeat. Sat on his throne and watched his fleet prepare for a battle they could not win. Somewhere in the distance, 4,000 human warships were approaching. They would arrive within hours. The end of the Dominion was coming, and nothing could stop it. There was a dark planet, with gray cities and red skies filled with smoke from endless factories. 12 billion souls lived on its surface, watching the sky with terror in their hearts. Their military had told them that humans were savages who ate their enemies. They expected death to fall from above like rain. Admiral Menu's fleet arrived in perfect formation. 4,000 warships surrounded the planet, blocking every escape route. Facing them were 3,000 vessels, arranged in a desperate defensive sphere. It was the largest battle the galaxy had ever seen. Before firing a single shot, Menu broadcast a message to the enemy fleet and the planet below. "I am Admiral Menu of the Earth United Fleet. This is your final chance to surrender. All military personnel who lay down arms will be treated as prisoners of war under human law. Civilians will not be harmed. Your government will be removed, but your people will survive." He paused, letting the words sink in. "If you refuse, we will destroy every warship in orbit. Your military will cease to exist. Your overlord will face justice for the 300,000 dead of Nu. Choose now." High Overlord's response came quickly. His face appeared on screens across both fleets, twisted with rage and pride. "Humans," he said, spitting the word like poison. "You think your clever weapons make you strong. We have ruled this galaxy for 1,000 years. We have crushed species that were ancient when your ancestors first discovered fire. We will never surrender to animals." He raised all four of his arms toward the sky. "Attack, destroy them all, for the glory of the Dominion." The fleet charged forward, 3,000 ships, all firing at once, filling space with energy beams and missiles and plasma. It was a storm of destruction, the final scream of a dying empire. Lieutenant was ready. "All ships execute defense pattern Alpha," he ordered. "Battleships target enemy capitals. Cruisers handle their support vessels. Destroyers protect our flanks." The human fleet moved like water flowing around the charge. Where the enemy expected resistance, they found empty space. Where they expected safety, they found death. The battleship Final Answer led the attack. Its stellar lances cut through enemy ships like knives through cloth. Admiral Menu watched from his bridge as vessels exploded around him. He felt no joy, only the grim satisfaction of necessary work being done. War Commander, who had returned to fight despite his wounds, commanded a squadron of heavy cruisers. He had promised that he would ram his ship into the human flagship if necessary. He had promised to die killing humans. He got his wish, but not the way he wanted. His cruisers pushed through the chaos, heading straight for the Final Answer. Menu saw them coming and gave a simple order. "Target those ships, remove them." 12 stellar lances fired at once. Squadron vanished in a flash of light so bright that sensors across the system went blind for a moment. The war commander who had burned new was gone. No body, no wreckage, nothing but atoms scattered through space. The battle was not close, it was destruction. Human ships fought with perfect coordination, sharing information, supporting each other, covering weaknesses. Ships fought alone, confused, unable to communicate effectively after weeks of disrupted networks. They were brave. They were determined. They were doomed. In 2 hours it was over. 3,000 warships destroyed. The human fleet lost 107 vessels. The defensive sphere around them was gone. Admiral Menu looked at the planet below. 12 billion civilians waited for judgment. They had done nothing wrong. They had not ordered the attack on Nu. They had not laughed at Earth's warning. They were just people living their lives, following their leaders. "Send landing parties," Menu ordered. "Secure the capital. Protect civilian infrastructure. I want hospitals, schools, and food distribution centers guarded by our soldiers. Anyone who attacks civilians will be executed by their own commanding officers. Is that clear?" "Yes, Admiral." Human soldiers descended to the planet in thousands of. They expected fierce resistance. What they found was mostly silence. Sergeant Major led his team through the streets of the capital. Gray buildings rose around them like mountains. Alien civilians watched from windows, too afraid to move. Children hid behind their parents. One young child ran into the street, separated from her family in the chaos. She was small, no bigger than a human 5-year-old, with gray skin and wide red eyes filled with tears. Knelt down to her level. The child flinched, expecting to be hurt. "It is okay," said softly. "We are not going to hurt you." He reached into his pack and pulled out a food bar. He offered it to the child. She stared at him, confused. The propaganda had told her humans were monsters, but this human was giving her food. Slowly, carefully, she took the bar. She looked at it, then at him, then back at the bar. Her parents came running from a nearby building, terrified that soldiers had taken their daughter. They froze when they saw the scene. A human soldier, kneeling, feeding their child. Stood up and stepped back, giving them space. "Take care of her," he said. "The war is over for you. Go home, stay safe." The family disappeared into the crowd. Soldiers looked at him with respect. This was what they were fighting for, not conquest, justice. In the central palace, High Overlord was captured by a special forces team. He tried to fight, killing 2 human soldiers with a blade hidden in his throne before he was shot with a paralyzing beam. They found him lying on the floor of his grand hall, surrounded by dead bodyguards, still screaming curses at the humans who had defeated him. He was brought to the final answer in chains. Admiral Minu did not bother to meet with him. There was nothing to say. The Overlord would face trial for his crimes. The sentence was already certain. Instead, Minu descended to the planet and spoke to its people through a global broadcast. "The war is over," he said. "Your military is destroyed. Your government is dissolved. Your overlord is in custody and will face justice for the murder of 300,000 innocent human civilians." He looked directly into the camera, his old face showing the weight of everything that had happened. "But you, the people of this world, are not our enemies. You did not attack Nu. You did not laugh at our warning. You are not responsible for the crimes of your leaders. Human soldiers will remain here to maintain order, but they are not occupiers. They are here to protect you during this transition." He paused, letting his words settle. "If any ever raises a weapon against humanity again, we will return. And next time there will be no mercy. Remember this day. Remember what happens when you ignore Earth's warnings." The broadcast ended. Across the former Dominion, citizens began the long process of rebuilding. Human aid ships arrived with food, medicine, and materials. Schools that had taught children to hate humans now had human teachers showing students that not all aliens were monsters. 1 year later, a new Galactic Council meeting was held. Ambassador Sora sat in the same seat where she had delivered humanity's final warning. The hall was different now. No one laughed. No one dismissed human concerns. A young alien delegate asked what had happened to High Overlord. Sora answered simply. He was tried for crimes against humanity. The evidence was clear. The verdict was unanimous. The sentence was carried out. The chamber fell silent. No one needed to ask what the sentence had been. Later, representatives from dozens of species approached human diplomats with offers of friendship, trade, and alliance. They had seen what humanity could do in war. Now they wanted to see what humanity could do in peace. Counselor, the alien who had warned the so long ago, spoke with Sora privately after the meeting. "Your species frightens me," he admitted, "but it also gives me hope. You could have destroyed everything. You could have killed billions. You chose not to. Why?" Sora thought about the question for a long moment. "Because we are human," she said finally. "We carry the memory of our own violent past. We know what happens when revenge becomes more important than justice. We built our weapons so we would never have to use them. When we were forced to use them, we chose to use them carefully." She looked out the window at the stars beyond. "We do not want to rule the galaxy. We just want to live in peace. But anyone who threatens that peace will learn the same lesson they learned. Earth's warnings are not bluffs. They are promises, and we always keep our promises." Far away on the rebuilt colony of Nu, Admiral Minu stood on a cliff overlooking the ocean. 3 million people now called this world home. New cities were rising. Children were being born. Life was continuing. Captain Park stood beside him. She had survived her escape pod, though she walked with a limp now and her face carried scars from the crash. She commanded a new ship, the Unyielding, and she had become a symbol of human courage throughout the fleet. "Do you think they will remember?" she asked. The Minu shook his head. "Some will forget. That is how people are." "And if they forget, if someone else attacks us?" Minu smiled, but there was no joy in it, only certainty. "Then we will remind them." In a distant corner of the galaxy, another alien empire was debating whether to expand toward human space. They had watched the war with great interest. They had seen humanity's hidden strength revealed. They had seen what happened to those who ignored Earth's warnings. Their military commander made a recommendation to the Emperor. It was a single sentence, transmitted through secure channels, archived forever in their historical records. Avoid humanity. At all costs, avoid humanity. The Emperor accepted the recommendation. That empire never expanded toward human space, neither did any other. Earth's doctrine remained unchanged for the next 1,000 years. Absolute restraint followed by absolute devastation. Peace through the certainty of consequences. Mercy for the innocent. Death for those who threatened human lives. The galaxy remembered what happened to the galaxy learned to respect humanity's warnings. And humanity continued to grow among the stars, building new worlds, raising new generations, dreaming new dreams. They never forgot the price of peace. They never forgot the weight of their weapons. They never forgot that some promises must be kept, no matter the cost. Earth had given its final warning. The universe had listened. No one would ever laugh at humanity again.